it's Lee from colouringqueen.net, and today I am here with a colouring story. So I hope you're having a great day today. I'm finishing up my Halloween picture for my colour along Hello Christmas, and I haven't got to do one for my ocean themed colour along, so this is going to be it for the month. And I've made quite a few mistakes, so I'll be hitting it hard with the Posca and whatnot to try and erase some of my bad colouring. And one of the problems is that my light is not high enough for me, and so I hit my head on it all the time. That holds my camera up, and so I can't colour that well when I'm filming, so I tend to make oodles of mistakes. So anyway, it is what it is, and so hopefully it'll turn out okay. But as long as you have fun, that's the main thing. So yeah, since we last spoke, we've been doing just a few things around the house. We're still looking to buy another house instead of this one. But yeah, we haven't found anything. It's been rainy for most of last week here. It was really horrendous. And I think one night we let Buddy out to go to the bathroom, and we couldn't find him. So it's pouring rain, and he's like black with just a little bit of white on him. And it's pouring rain, it's dark, and we're looking everywhere. And I was thinking David must have left the gate open when he went out earlier, and he's escaped. And we were looking under, balconies, behind pot plants, garbage bins, under stairs, you name it. And we were doing laps and laps around the house, and it's pouring down rain. And in the end, I found him. And you'll never guess, I don't know how he got there, but I've got a strawberry planter box that's on legs, and in front of it there's like a tree and there's several big pot plants. I don't know how he managed it, but he was under that strawberry planter box protecting himself from the rain. So if we ever play hide and seek with him, he is downright going to win, and that's for sure. So, and speaking of dogs, little Billy that I mind, she's here as well. So you might hear her little Tinkerbell in the background. Had a bit of a scare with Billy during the week. Her mummy, who's a vet nurse, found a lump on her the other night, and she's just had cancer treatment. So she, of course, was really anxious that it hasn't returned. And I, of course, was just sweating because I try not to get attached, but I'm going to get attached. That's a given. And so I spent the night worrying about her, and luckily she took her to work and the vets examined her, and it's not the return of the horror. So that's good, and she's sitting here and she's happy as, but you might hear a little Tinkerbell. And another dog-related thing is we actually sat down, David and I, when it was pouring rain the other day. We don't often watch movies. I like documentaries, and David's usually very tired and just sleeps, as soon as it starts. So the other day he actually stayed awake. I chose Red Dog, which has got a lot of good reviews, and it's an Australian movie. And I chose that one to watch, and he was a bit bored at first, and, I could see that he was going to drop off. And then all of a sudden, he sprang to life, and he was watching the whole thing through, and he cried. I absolutely blubbed. I just cried at the end. But it is a really good movie if you want just like a feel-good movie. It's not action-based or it's just a really nice movie. And despite my tears, it actually does have a positive end. It's not a terrible movie as far as endings go, but if you do like Australian movies and sort of outback ones that are roughly based like that, you might like this one. I don't know, but anyway, that's it from me. And before I go on and get into today's story, I do just want to shout out to my friends in the US, I have to share this little tip with you. It has absolutely nothing to do with colouring. Absolutely nothing, but I really want to share it with you because you could actually make someone pretty happy with it, and it might even be you. So a friend of mine in the US told me about some laws that happened in the US as a result of the, the little panny. And so now this applies to people who have a business or know someone that has their own business. It could be your boss if you work for someone. Anyway, it just has to be a business in the US. So during 2020, the US came out with a couple of laws designed to help people out with, the problems in the world at that particular time. Now, one related to a payroll protection plan, and the other was an employee retention tax credit. And basically, businesses could choose which one of these things they could take advantage of, which one of these tax credits they could apply for at the time, but they couldn't apply for both. And most people applied for the payroll one, which is my understanding, because basically it was a bit easier. But later on, the government allowed people to also apply for the employee retention tax credit, even if they'd already applied for the payroll one. So I checked it out on the IRS website just to make sure that this was genuine, because I am not US based, as the accent clearly shows. So anyway, there's oodles of money laying in wait for businesses to claim on this employee retention tax credit before the scheme expires, which might be soon. So, of course, there are some rules. So you basically have to have a business in the US, which I believe had to start in 2019 at least, or before, obviously. And you have to have at least 2 employees, so they can't be related to you either. So it can't be you and your husband, or your wife, or your spouse, or your mum or brother or whatnot. And you have to have been affected by the pandemic. Now, this is a tricky piece. A lot of people think that means a negative effect, but it actually doesn't mean that. It could just mean that it's a change. Like if you're a restaurant and instead of having sit-in diners, you actually had to pivot to doing takeaway only. Anyway, there are experienced people that can see if you actually qualify for this. Anyway, if you're eligible, you could actually receive, hold on to your hats, this is going to be worth it, up to $26,000 per employee. So that's nothing to sneeze at. I mean, think of how many colouring pencils you could buy with that. So if you had 10 employees in your business, you might even be eligible to get like $250,000 from the government. But you have to be quick because apparently it is going to end soon. It had like a monetary limit. And before you ask, I don't know of anything that is similar in Australia in those sorts of monetary amounts based on per employee. I wish I did, because I can imagine that so many people would just love to get on board. But apparently in the US, according to my friend, and I could be wrong, I don't live in the US, but apparently, a lot of people just don't know about it. Even some accounting firms are just not on this because they changed the law and then brought in that people could apply for this one as well. So anyway, I'll leave a link below this video where you can get some more information, or where you can share it with a friend that might have a business or know someone with a business. And it will basically take you to a page, I've checked it out myself, where you can speak to a firm of accountants. That's basically, you make an appointment and they give you a buzz. And they're processing a lot of these claims, and they can pretty well tell you, based on your circumstances, in about 5 minutes, whether your business would be eligible to make this claim or not. Now, you might be eligible for this even if your business didn't shut down, or even if you didn't have any sort of effect on from the pandemic. Even if you actually did better during the pandemic. So I'll leave the link below, and if I remember, I'll pop it on the community tab as well. And hopefully it'll help someone out, and hopefully I've checked out all the laws thoroughly, but US is not my thing, so bear with me. The real experts are the ones where you click the link, and apparently it is just like a 5-minute call, unless it's like really complex, and it might be 10 minutes or 15 minutes. And hopefully I've got all that info spot on, but the link below will give you all the info that you need. And US law is not my thing, but as I said, I did check out the IRS website just to make sure that the information that I was given was correct. So anyway, I hope that helps someone out. It might be you, it might be a friend or whoever, but it is going to run out soon, so if you want to get it. Oh, and just in case you think that you can't get it because you've already done your tax return, your tax return can actually be amended and be relodged to include this, so that's not a problem. So anyway, we've talked about the dogs, and we've talked about how to get some oodles of money if you're eligible for it. So now let's talk about some kitty cats, and in particular, my dog is just coming in to say hello to me. Hello, buddykins. Let's talk about a grumpy cat. And we're going to talk about a grumpy cat because I reviewed the colouring book the other day, and I thought we could talk about Grumpy's background a little bit, and the time that Grumpy took on a big company, and why, and what happened in this Grumpalicious episode. So back on the 4th of April 2012, a calico cat had 4 kittens at the Bundinsons' home in Morristown, Arizona. No one would have expected the juggernaut that would explode around these cute felines, and how the lives of their human's mum, Tabitha Bundinson, daughter Crystal, and brother Brian would change forever. It's unknown who the father of the kittens was, and it seems the mother had a few little suitors and a few little hookups. But mother and daughter decided to keep 2 of the kittens as well as the mother cat. And those kittens were a boy and a girl. And the 2 other kittens, boys, I think they were given away. And Crystal decided that she would name the little girl. And she decided to call her Tartar Sauce. And this was inspired by 2 things. When Tartar Sauce was born, she originally had an orangish colouring, and they thought that she looked like the tartar sauce that was used at Red Lobster restaurant where Tabitha had been waitressing for the last 10 years. And just before the kittens had been born, Crystal had actually tried tartar sauce there and for the first time, and she was like, ooh, no, and her mother encouraged her to try it because it goes with fish, but, Crystal didn't really like the taste of it. So this experience was fresh in Crystal's mind when the kittens were born. So looking like tartar sauce, and her reaction to the tartar sauce that she tried at the restaurant, she decided to name the kitten Tartar Sauce rather than tartar sauce. And it was just a little spin on the name. And the little brother of the kitten, he was black and white, and he was named Pokey. Now, it was clear early on that both of the kittens had dwarfism and an underbite, although the underbite was far more pronounced with tartar sauce. And although it gave the kittens a grumpy look, it wasn't painful for them, and there was no need for any surgery. And my own cat, Millie, also has an underbite. And it's often hard to tell because of that, what mood she's in. Usually grumpy, to be honest. So anyway, Mother Cat and the kittens settled into life with their family. Tabitha continued to work as a waitress at Red Lobster, and she was barely making ends meet. And then 5 months later, their world changed completely. In September of that year, Brian, Tabitha's brother, visited his sister. Now, although the 2 are close, they really never got to see each other in person, And while there, he was visiting, he thought he'd post a picture of the frowning tartar sauce on Reddit. And he asked the community if she was the grumpiest cat you've ever seen. The thing is, no one believed a cat could possibly have that expression. And readers and Redditors, they believed that the picture of the blue-eyed tartar sauce was actually photoshopped. So Brian doubled down and he proved that she was indeed real by posting a video on YouTube of her. Within 36 hours, that video had over 1.5 million views, making her a viral sensation. And the response was just overwhelming. This cute little cat was launched into internet stardom as Grumpy Cat. The memes were everywhere with captions saying, "I'm not happy," and various other captions based on or related to Grumpy's general appearance. And the thing is, Grumpy, which is her nickname, and which she answered to, she was actually a really happy cat. She loved to cuddle, but the Grumpy Cat brand was on fire, and it was all based on her grumpy, frowny face appearance. She started first with Instagram and her own account, and of course Facebook, Twitter, and cameos in a lot of other YouTube videos. And Brian, her Tabitha's brother, the one that actually took that first picture of her and put it on Reddit, he actually became Grumpy's social media manager, and he was the one posting, and still is, on social media for the Grumpy Cat brand. She has ended up, as at today's date, when I filmed this, with over 2.6 million followers just on Instagram. And of course, it was time to turn those raving fans into raving buyers. And the brand didn't disappoint, with every item of merchandise imaginable being produced: t-shirts, books, colouring books, you name it. The demand for tartar sauce was so strong. Morning shows like the Today Show and Good Morning America wanted to meet this cute kitty, and her family were happy for her to meet the world. Tabitha actually took a month leave from work at Red Lobster, and she hit the trail and she went to New York with Grumpy Cat and did all of these media appearances. And of course, while she was there, she also had a photo shoot with Time magazine. And you've arrived then when you're at the Time magazine headquarters. In most photos, you'll see that Grumpy Cat's usually sitting, as her dwarfism makes her back legs weak, and it's really uncomfortable for her to stand for long periods of time. Tabitha was actually soon able to quit work as a waitress and began just working on the Grumpy Cat empire from home. And little tartar sauce was now the family breadwinner, and she wasn't even a year old. That, of course, meant changes and adjustments for the family, and they soon decided that they would homeschool Tabitha's daughter Crystal, and that way they could still travel together. She would get her education and they could be together more. Brian continued to work on Grumpy's social media accounts, and he still does. And Tabitha was in charge of Grumpy's day-to-day life, including spending one day a week with her, taking photos for her accounts. And she actually soon got a manager as well, Ben Lashes, who was also managing Keyboard Cat and Nyan Cat. But hopefully he's not allergic to cats. But Grumpy was, of course, the biggest star in his stable. But so from struggling to make ends meet and barely seeing her daughter, or her brother for that matter, Tabitha's life completely changed. She got to be with her daughter more and travel together. They developed a closer bond with her brother Brian, and she'd only really seen him maybe once or twice in person in 10 years. And now she gets to see him every couple of months because he's Grumpy's social media manager. And plus there was also the joy and the gratification that Grumpy was spreading throughout the world just with her general grumpiness. And the one thing that they did want to concentrate on was drawing media attention to feline dwarfism. And often these cats are abandoned because they're perceived to have something wrong with them. And Grumpy Cat and her family actually prove that you can have a full and happy life even with the dwarfism. And a lot of money that Grumpy earns and earned goes to actually support these shelters that house the cats that have been abandoned. So in 2012, Tardisaurus was not even a year old when she was named the world's most influential cat. But it didn't end there for her. By January of the next year, the Grumpy Cat brand was so big it was time to trademark her name and image, which was necessary as there was a great deal of interest from large brands in using her image. A company was also formed called Grumpy Cat Limited, and she was featured in her own TV commercial for Honey Nut Cheerios and even McDonald's. And during this time, Grumpy would also make media appearances all over with her owner travelling with her. And Tabitha said that, she got really excited when she knew that it was time to go travelling. When she got her carrier basket out, she'd come climb straight into it, thinking that she really kind of liked travelling. And she seemed to like appearing on the TV shows. She was always well behaved and sweet, unlike, her frowny face. And actually, Grumpy Cat's contracts contained terms to ensure Grumpy's well-being, with her family always saying that her health and safety was the most important thing to us. When Beyonce, for example, she makes appearances, she demands rose-scented candles, juicy baked chicken, 78 degrees temperature in the space, and brand new towels, among a pile of other demands. But Grumpy's demands on her rider were just simple. She just wanted some clean water and a cool place to sit. Months later, in March, there were over 600 people just lined up at an event to have their photo taken with Grumpy. And at one point, the line was actually 3 blocks long. And during this time, a lot of people criticised Grumpy's parents or family, and they were very concerned about her welfare at these events. But as I said earlier, the family always said that the health and welfare of Grumpy came first. And so for some events, Tardisaurus wouldn't be there for long. But while she was there, she would be in an air-conditioned room, so she was comfortable and could sit down. Some people actually say that they thought she was drugged because she was so sleepy and placid, but Tabitha actually denied that emphatically and just basically said she was sleepy because she was usually active between 3 and 6 a.m. and she liked to sleep during the day, just like my cat Millie does. But Grumpy's fans were incredibly understanding. If any other celebrity kept people waiting for the amount of time people would wait for Grumpy, there would be a backlash on social media. But Grumpy's fans understood that sometimes, they might line up and wait to have their photo taken with her, but she just might be too tired to meet them that day. And they understood that Tabitha restricted the amount of time that Grumpy spends with the general public, and they knew that they just might miss out on that chance to have that photo taken with her, and they seemed to be, on the whole, pretty accepting of that. Now, I know Pokey doesn't get a lot of mention, but Pokey is still alive to my knowledge, and he is Grumpy's brother from the same litter, and he wasn't completely left out of the Grumpy juggernaut. He was in a comic book called Misadventures of Grumpy Cat and Pokey, and Pokey's actually a lot more feisty and actually grumpier than Grumpy Cat, than his famous sister. But unlike Grumpy Cat, he doesn't like travelling, he doesn't like meeting people, and he's not calm and placid, he's full of beans. So as Grumpy's brand grew, so did her merchandise, with a wide range of products being produced, including a lot of unofficial or knockoff products. So if you do wish to buy Grumpy Cat merchandise, you should buy it directly from her website, just to make sure that you're getting the real deal and not supporting counterfeit products. Now, in 2003, she was also awarded, at just 1 year old, a Lifetime Achievement Award by Friskies. Now, Friskies was Grumpy Cat's favourite food, apparently, And of course, they were also a sponsor. And as well as the sponsorship money, she also had a lifetime supply of her favourite food from them. And they also ensured that she travelled in comfort with everything that she needed for these events. Now, her favourite Friskies food is apparently called savoury shreds, and her owner thought that she really liked the gravy that's in that product. And her favourite non Frisky food is tuna and Starbucks coffee cake. Now, I've never had Starbucks coffee cake, so I don't know if it actually has coffee in it, but I didn't think cats were meant to have coffee. I'd love to know about this coffee cake. It sounds like it's good, but I've never seen it. Now, she also appeared on YouTube in a game that Friskies created for her called Will Keaty Play With It? And they had a range of objects, and they guessed whether she would play with them or not. Now, her favourite things to actually play with were the curtains. Millie likes doing that as well. Bags and balls of string. But in 2013, she wrote her first book, and I'm guessing that she didn't actually write this. I'm guessing that a human wrote this, but I could be wrong. And her first book, Grumpy Book, made the New York Times bestsellers list. Now, people everywhere responded to Grumpy Cat. There's just something about her face, and it just makes you smile, even on the toughest of times. And Brian actually told a lovely story once to the media that he'd heard about Grumpy Cat and the effect that she has on others. He said there was a lady that they met in Texas, and she'd actually had cancer, and she made Grumpy Cat part of her healing process. So every morning before she went to chemotherapy, she would look through pictures of Grumpy Cat, and it would help her get through it and get in the right mindset. And apparently that lady is in remission now. So it's really nice how someone or something that you may never have met, and it gives you so much comfort. Now, of course, her effect on others may not be like that, but she certainly was adorable. Now, of course, when you've got a celeb as big as Grumpy Cat, it wouldn't be long till Hollywood called. And in this case, it was for the starring role of Grumpy Cat's Worst Christmas Ever, which was released in 2014. And I've seen that. Aubrey Brown from Parks and Recreation was actually the voice of Grumpy Cat for that show, for that movie. And during filming, they were really careful just to make sure that she didn't get worn out and overdo any action shots. So they really worked around her to ensure that she was comfortable. Now, Tartar Sauce's owners, they were very careful to protect the Grumpy Cat brand legally, with trademarks and copyright registration for photos and images of her. And one of the things they tried to get was the grumpycat.com domain name, but unfortunately it had actually been registered by someone else before the Grumpy Cat brand name or even Tartar Sauce was born. With those legal protections they were able to obtain, they could actually grant licenses to others to use the intellectual property that they had registered, and in 2013 they did that. And so they granted a license to Grenade Beverages in May of that year. Now, that company makes a variety of drinks, and they wanted to license or have the right to produce a range of Grumpy Cat branded coffee products. Now, that's something that I would buy. So a license agreement basically just gives you a right to do something that would otherwise be illegal. And one of the lines in the license agreement stated that the agreement was being granted to produce a line of Grumpy Cat branded coffee products or other additional products within the product category, which was defined as non-alcoholic beverages. And if the parties both agreed, they could market those. Now, sometime in 2014 or round about that time, Grenade Beverages actually acquired the Grumpy Cat domain name. And once they did that, they wrote to Grumpy Cat Company with a proposal that they would actually transfer that name to the company in return for expanding that license agreement to include Grumpy Cat branded coffee products rather than a line of Grumpy Cat branded coffee products. And to add that rather than being mutually approved, these items could be approved as long as that wasn't unreasonably withheld. Now, that's a huge expansion in legal terms. So Grumpy Cat said, no, I'm not happy with that, and she would not agree. Now, obviously, it wasn't Tartar Sauce, but her company that would not agree. But Grenade, they actually didn't give up. They doubled down. And 2 years later, in October of 2015, Grenade actually sought Grumpy's approval again to add ground roasted coffee products to their license agreement. But Grumpy again, she said she wasn't happy and she said no. And in fact, she said no several times. But despite the hard no from Grumpy, they went ahead and they decided to advertise and sell ground roasted coffee with the name Grumpy Cat Roasted Coffee, displaying on the bag with the Grumpy Cat illustration as well as the brand name, all of which Grumpy had not only not approved, but she had emphatically said no. So not only that, they set up a website on that Grumpy Cat domain that they had acquired. They sold the ground coffee and Grumpachino t-shirts on that site. And of course, they merrily marketed everything, much to Grumpy's owner's displeasure. Now, it didn't take long, and Grumpy sued, claiming that they had infringed the intellectual property rights, they'd breached the contract, and they'd used the Grumpy trademark and likeness, as well as other things, like cyber squatting on the domain name. And Grumpy wanted damages. She also wanted an injunction, basically, which is an order telling them to stop. She wanted interest, and of course she wanted her legal fees. Now, there were a lot of orders, counterclaims, and new parties added to this litigation. But for simplicity, I'll just summarise. Ultimately, what happened was Grumpy Cat Company commenced legal proceedings against Grenade. They couldn't sort it out of court, and they went and filed for copyright infringement in the Central District Court of California. Now, Grenade's argument was basically that the ground coffee was actually included in the license agreement, and that granted them the right to use that on a line of branded coffee products. Now, what is a line and what is coffee products? I mean, seriously, who knows? Now, the court looked at that and they tried to resolve that ambiguity, like what is a line, and with what evidence they had before it, whether it was a single coffee product item or a line actually meant a group of related coffee product items, or was it something else completely? And just as a reminder, that line in the license agreement was a line of Grumpy Cat branded coffee products or other additional products within the product category, which was defined as non-alcoholic beverages. So does that mean beans? Or does that mean sparkling products? I mean, it's really hard to work out what it means. And is a line like a line of one particular item, like, so for example, milk flavoured coffee products, which is what Grumpy's owners believed that they were authorising, by the way? Or does it mean like the canned coffee that you can get? Or does it mean a coffee cup? I mean, and how does a t-shirt fit into that line? Or is that one of those additional products? And if it's an additional product, that is a very broad thing. Like, would it be appropriate for a soft drink company to create, for example, key rings or mouse pads as additional products? Because this is so far ranging, it could be anything. Additional products within the product category, though, limits it down to non-alcoholic beverages, but Still, I mean, it could mean all sorts of things. Who knows? Anyway, in order to get these products to market, both parties had to actually agree to it. Now, there was no agreement, obviously, but by 2018, it was too late. The matter was already there, had already filed, and it went to court. There was a 5-day trial, and there was an 8-person jury that actually heard this case. And the jury found actually in favour of Grumpy Cat. They assessed damages against Grenade and others at over $710,000. Specifically, $200,000 was for the copyright infringement, and then there was trademark infringements, breach of contract, and they also awarded a really nominal damages of $1 against Grenade. But the jury also found in favour. So Grumpy got over $700,000 worth of damages in those court pursuits, but did she get the domain name back? So one of the things that they had tried to get was the domain name, and they had launched proceedings for cyber squatting, which is basically taking a domain that someone else might be entitled to because of a trademark, etc. And one of the things that you needed to establish that claim was actually to prove that the person had acted in bad faith, and the court wasn't actually able to make that leap in view of the fact that Grenade were actually authorised to sell the licensed range of products. So Grenade got to keep the domain. So the interesting thing about this case was that Grumpy was entitled to the damages that she got because her owners had actually protected her intellectual property so well with trademarks and copyright registrations that she didn't even need to prove lost profits. She didn't need to prove that she'd lost any money, which normally you would be required to. And they also had protected her images and their long-term rights with that license agreement. And that's exactly how Bill Gates made his money. That's how he got rich. He didn't give up the bank, he just gave up the right to use the bank, if you know what I mean. So the only thing that could have been done better was actually maybe tighten up the language of that license agreement to remove any ambiguity and ensure what types of products and product lines it covered. So by August of 2018, Grumpy had over 8 trademarks associated with her registered at the US Patent and Trademark Office, and by that stage her website was actually selling a range of feline products, Grumpy products, over 1,000 in fact. And by that time, Forbes actually estimated that Grumpy was worth somewhere between $1 million and $100 million. Now I'm thinking Grumpy is worth more towards the 100 million line. A year later, in May of 2019, unfortunately, Tartar Sauce became ill. Her family took her to the vets and it was discovered that she had a urinary tract infection. Now, there were complications with this with her, probably because of her dwarfism, and the vets worked very hard to try and save her and do everything they could, but it wasn't possible. And on the 17th of May 2019, Tartar Sauce crossed the Rainbow Bridge at the age of just 7. Now, she may have died young, but she certainly did more and touched more people in her life than most of us could ever dream of. And her family, of course, were understandably devastated, as were her legion of fans. But at least we have our memories of her, and she continues to live on with her still active social media accounts. I'd love to know if you are a fan of Grumpy Cat. Other than the colouring book, I don't have any other merch of hers, but I still love looking at pictures of her. They just make me smile. And I guess I have my own Grumpy Cat with Millie, and a lot of the reason why I have Millie is because I remember Grumpy Cat so much, and when I seen Millie and she had the same frowny little face, and her picture was on the website for the animal shelter where I got her from, I just fell in love with that little downturned face, and I just loved her to bits, and I couldn't get to the shelter the next morning fast enough to grab her in case someone else took my gorgeous little frowny feline. And so it was her little underbite and her little frowny face that made me fall in love with her. And it was instant love. And then when I seen her and she just rolled around, and she certainly doesn't have dwarfism. She's just got the underbite like Grumpy Cat. But it was just love at first sight. And maybe if I hadn't have seen Grumpy's little underbite and been so familiar with it, I might not have discovered my own little Grumpy Cat. Who knows? But I'd love to know what you think. And until next time, stay safe and happy colouring.